fuck am I watching right now? Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
All right, we got a crazy case for you this week. A small town tragedy turned into a mystery. A lot of intrigue here.
Absolutely. This is one of those cases with plenty of twists and turns. You think you got it figured out, and then you're like, wait, that doesn't add up. You know, some other cases come to mind, like for instance, the suicide of, I think it was Ellen Greenberg. Was that her who it was ruled a suicide and she stabbed herself 20-something times in the back, allegedly? You know, it's like these cases, man, these cases never cease to amaze me. The extent that people will go to stage a crime scene. You know what I mean? It's pretty insane. Yeah. So, you ready to get into this?
Should we get into it without giving too much away?
Let's do it, man.
All right.
Let me talk at you a minute, creepers. Now, we know, even with all the content we create here at TCG, that your little true crime loving hearts still yearn for more. And that's why we try to keep a lookout for other badass true crime podcasts that we ourselves enjoy and therefore want to promote. Which brings me to Mode of Mischief, a show about true cybercrime. Mode of Mischief is a podcast that focuses on hackers in the dark web. On this show, you'll hear stories about Israel's cyber warfare division, the teenage hacking group that got into Los Alamos nuclear lab, the man who hacked into NASA, and much, much more. Subscribe to Mode of Mischief wherever you get your podcast, or click the link in the show notes. Mode of Mischief. It's a different kind of true crime that we know you're gonna love.
My father, he loved everybody and he loved his job especially, but more than just his friends and his job, he loved his family, most importantly. He always had a really huge sense of family fundamentals and everything like that. And he was just always a happy guy, always smiling, always saying hey to everyone. And, he was just all around just a man's man, just a great guy.
Lieutenant Gliniewicz was a person who truly did care about his community. He was always involved with community events, village events, etc. He truly loved his job. He loved doing things for the explorers, and his explorers was a huge part of his life. He really dedicated hundreds of thousands of hours into bettering the Fox Lake community, the Illinois law enforcement explorers, and the national law enforcement explorers. And events like this will truly alter the opinions of some, but for me, it truly makes myself want to become a police officer more and more and to fulfill his important work and continuing doing what he did. I thought it would have been him apprehending the suspect. I didn't think it would have been the other way around. When I heard it, I was devastated. My school was in a lockdown. I immediately burst into tears, and I just couldn't believe what I was being told. It was truly, it was heartbreaking for me, my explorers, the community, everyone.
Well, first of all, the fatal gunshot wound, which was between the first and second ribs, was located 2 inches under the bulletproof vest, which means the gun had to be very close and shoved under the vest for that shot to occur. So that was very, very unusual. That means it was close range. Secondly, the officer's uniform was in roll call shape, meaning that the shirt was in proper position, the pants were in proper position, the bulletproof vest was in proper position, which indicated there was no struggle. And that was confirmed when we did the autopsy, where there was no defensive wounds on the arms, the hands, the chest, the legs. So the manner of death, in my eyes, was not clear cut. I needed more evidence. I needed the gunshot residue. I need the DNA. I needed fingerprints. I need the psychosocial history. So as far as I was concerned, all 3 categories of manner of death were open. The autopsy findings on the day that we did it, I could show you how it could be a homicide and I could show you how it could be a suicide. However, when we saw that the clothing was intact, we had to think he must have been surprised. We didn't have initially really any idea within the coroner's office as to the manner of death. The crime task force proceeded as a homicide because of the radio dispatch.
Obviously, every investigation that law enforcement takes into perspective is you have to look at it as either a homicide, accidental cause of death, or suicide. With that in mind, I know my father. My family knows my father, and his closest friends knew him as well. He was not someone who ever contemplated suicide. He never had suicidal tendencies or anything like that. I mean, that's just a rumor, and that's that. It is a rumor. It was someone that somebody made up because they wanted to interpret the story in their own.
All right, for our case this week, as we mentioned, we're doing a small town tragedy that turns into a murder mystery. And this small town that we keep mentioning is Fox Lake, Illinois, which has a population of about 11,000 people and is a recreational hub for boaters that tend to avoid Lake Michigan. So it's, I want to say, a little bit west of Lake Michigan, and it's a small town that's just absolutely surrounded by lakes. Like, seriously, they could spare a few for the rest of us that would like to boat and do some recreational stuff, especially those of us that have Lake Mead, which is draining. Yeah.
I was about to say, especially those in Las Vegas who need water.
It's like a boater's dream, or fisherman, or whatever, water skier. It actually looked like a really cool place. Like this tour that I say I'm going to do when I retire, or I'm going to get an RV and like retire. I'm scheduled to retire by like 49, with 30 years into the company I'm at. So I have this dream of getting an RV and just touring the country and finding the, perfect little small town. Like this one would be, obviously it'd be pretty brutal during winter being in Illinois. And I don't know how many of those lakes are frozen, but then you get into ice fishing and you maybe some hockey and shit like that. It seems like this would be on the short list of like one of those really cool small towns.
Oh shit. Yeah, I could see that. I would definitely stay in the South during the winter though. I would explore that northern hemisphere of the United States, in the summer. Is it gonna get crazy up there, man? You get up towards Wisconsin and shit. They like park cars
need
on
to grow our
icy
Patreon
lakes.
a little bit more.
Don't even worry about
a summer home as well as a
crazy
regular home.
Like that's. No, I mean I'm just saying you travel. You travel.
All right, well, let's start this case off with a tragic day in this small town involving one of the town's, big names and a police officer that everyone knew. They called him G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe had this tragic day on September 1st, 2015, when he called over the radio of the Fox Lake Police Department. Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz, who we're referring to as G.I. Joe in this, radioed into dispatch on this day that he had noticed some suspicious activity. It was like an abandoned concrete plant or something like that. It was like this kind of desolate area of town. And he's calling in to say that he noticed some suspicious activity, that there were 3 men. And the first call was a little more, it wasn't as dire. He called in, just said he's, basically observing some suspicious activity with 3 individuals. And the dispatcher asked if he wanted backup, and he said no, that was okay. But then he called in a little bit after that and said that he was in pursuit of the individuals that had ran into the woods. He said that he described them as 2 white men and 1 black man. But at the time of his first radio call, we mentioned that, he didn't require backup. Now he was. After saying that they'd gone on foot into the woods, he was now saying, yes, go ahead and start the backup. So a little.
Yeah. Still doesn't sound very, very tense, very excited about this, very alarmed.
Right.
Like in the recordings of his call for backup and everything, it's just a normal day. Now I do realize this guy is a very experienced
to set that scene.
Police officer.
He was known around town as an all-American badass and someone who could handle just about anything, which might explain his calm demeanor over the radio. He had been on the force for almost 30 years and was less than a month away from retirement when he was on his way to work that day. So quite possible this is just another day, and this is stuff that he
that
has
is
dealt
never a
with
good
many
sign.
times before, and no big deal. He runs a cadet program and all that stuff and trains people for these type of situations.
Right.
So 3 minutes later, however, Joe would radio dispatch again. This is when he requests for backup in pursuit of the suspects, and this would be the last time that anyone would hear from Joe Gliniewicz alive. So less than 15 minutes after his call for backup, our officers arrived on the scene at the heavily overgrown and swampy area. They discovered the cruiser of Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz parked by the road, but no sign of Joe. So his cruiser's parked there what's weird when you see the footage of it is like it's parked, on the side of the road, no lights on, as if it was like, just left there for a long time. Doesn't look like you would almost expect if he took off on foot after these people into the swamp,
Right.
like the door to be open, the lights to be on, but no, it's just parked there, everything off.
Right. Maybe he just parked and decided to investigate on foot to be a little more sneaky. But I wonder what like
question.
led him to this place in the first place.
Maybe
It's-
part of your patrol,
like you say, an
you
abandoned
check out
warehouse,
abandoned areas
cement
like this
factory.
just to make sure all is well. This is somewhere where criminal activity could take place, drug deals or whatever. So moments
Right,
after
right.
arriving, the backup,
Yeah, a possibility.
the officers onto the scene heard a single gunshot from inside the wooded area nearby where Joe had claimed to have gone on pursuit of these individuals. So the officers ran and began to search the marshy and swampy area near where the shot came from. But not long after they began their initial search, they discovered the body of Joe Gliniewicz. He was already gone at this point, and he had suffered 2 gunshot wounds, one of which had been stopped by his ballistic vest, so his bulletproof vest had stopped one, and the other had missed the vest and hit him in the torso.
God, that seems crazy. Like
I
it must
don't
have came
know. I
in
don't
like
know where
around
the
his
holes in
collarbone or
these
something.
Would be maybe somewhere in the rib area. I don't know
Right,
if they
because,
wrap all the
I mean,
way around
imagine-
or if they just protect your chest and your back, and then there's an area in the rib area maybe. Or like I imagine
Maybe.
perhaps like around
I don't
near
know.
your
I
armpit,
feel like
there
I
might
feel like
be a
they
gap
wrap all
where
the
you
way
could get in.
around.
I don't know.
Definitely armpit, shoulder, but a lot of times you can tell that kind of like when an officer's wearing a vest, you can kind of tell that right there around his neckline. Of course you don't want to be
Yeah, you have to
choked
be able to
out by
move.
this freaking bulletproof vest. And can you imagine wearing something that's like, yeah, you got to be able to move and also be able, your body's got to be able to breathe in there too. Imagine
This is
if that
something I'm
bulletproof
looking
vest
forward
came
to
all the
is
way up to your
advancements
neck.
in,
That'd be insufferable in the summer,
bullet stopping
dude.
technology. As far as like, I know they've been for years. There's been discussion about like whatever spider web material that shit is, how like amazing that stuff is, like super lightweight and strong, like some advanced shit that's like to where you can wear T-shirts that'll stop bullets. Like that'd be nice. We see these school shootings and stuff. If we could advance technology as far as
Wow.
that stuff goes and allow the average person to be safer walking around with very little heavy material on, it'd be nice. Which is just sad, a sad state of affairs that we even have to talk
Right,
about.
but it
that,
has to have
it is
some
what it
sort
is.
of Yeah. Hopefully there's other options and things we can do as well. But like, I just can't imagine a T-shirt ever being able to stop a bullet, man. Even if the T-shirt doesn't tear, like it's just gonna suck that T-shirt into that bullet wound into your body. And maybe it's easier to remove the bullet though, and you have a much better chance of living if you could just like pull your shirt and just pop that bullet out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be insane?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's fabric like that. You hang it up, you stretch it, and the bullet won't penetrate it. But I don't know. That seems
I don't know.
almost
I wouldn't rule
impossible to
anything
me
out.
at this point. But who knows? No, absolutely not. I'm just saying to me, somebody who has no fucking idea.
So Joe's body would be found about 50 yards away from his police cruiser, and strewn about nearby the crime scene were several pieces of the lieutenant's equipment, including pepper spray, baton, taser, and his radio. So all this stuff was thrown about during an apparent scuffle with these individuals. Most importantly, however, was that his service weapon was not immediately located with his body, so his gun's missing, leading police to believe his assailants were now armed and on the run with the police officer's service weapon. So, man, what a scuffle, though. Like, at some point, he's had his baton and all this stuff out, as well as his gun, which is now missing. So, like, he's tried to use just about every weapon, apparently, unless they...
Yeah. And his pepper spray was used as well. His pepper spray was thrown away or thrown to the side somehow, and it had been used. They were able to tell that.
So this, of course, now sent the small town of
something
Fox
went
Lake
down
into
here.
full lockdown effect, and a massive manhunt would last for weeks and had begun in search of the local heroes' killers. So over 400 local law enforcement officers were assisted by agents in the FBI, the ATF, were all in on the search. It was all hands on deck. So that you imagine helicopters, like the government's even in there trying to find out who did this.
Oh yeah, of course. which blows me away that it even took this long. If two officers arrived on scene, heard a gunshot, immediately went towards the gunshot, and were still unable to find any of these suspects.
What's odd is that they get there and they hear one gunshot when we know that there was two. So clearly there was a gap between the first gunshot and the second if only one was heard when the police got there. No.
Were there any witnesses that heard the first one? Interesting.
So the intense search started from the moment that they found Joe's body. Since his sidearm wasn't immediately located at the time of the discovery, the officers thought that they had armed and dangerous individuals now on the loose, obviously. So his weapon was eventually located, though, and it was, in fact, nearby the crime scene. It was basically in some brush only feet away from Joe's body. They didn't realize that until later, and the search was already underway. But that must have relieved the town a little bit to know that his gun was in fact near him and that they didn't have that. But that being said, these are dangerous individuals nonetheless, apparently.
Also, why would they want to take the gun and then take a chance on being caught with that gun? And then it's a no-brainer, right? Why take the cop's gun? You've already killed him. Just leave that shit there.
Yeah.
There's no
sadly,
reason to take
the police didn't have much to go on in terms of suspects, since Lieutenant Joe had only described them as two white men and one black man. They don't have much to go on with that. There was no vehicle found in the area, so apparently these people were on foot the whole time. Police did bring in canines and even through thermal imaging cameras brought those out to try and search the swamp areas, but every time with no luck. It was as if the three men had somehow managed to take out G.I. Joe and then vanished as soon as they pulled the trigger. So, quite a mystery going on here.
That's what it seems like.
And then you think about the timing of it. It's the week of his retirement.
Absolutely.
And once again, what was he doing out in this area to begin with? Like, there's some odd things here, yeah. So
strange timing. Also, why doesn't he ask for backup right away? That is what blows me away when I looked into this case.
So important that
at the beginning. I mean, obviously,
alone in the woods with three suspicious individuals isn't enough to require backup.
Right. You've already established that you're on foot chasing these individuals, right? 3 of them. So you're outnumbered. I get it. You're G.I. Joe. I get it. But still, you're outnumbered. You don't know what they're capable of. And then you say, oh, I'm good for now. And then minutes later, you ask for backup. I don't know. It just seems weird to me. It just didn't strike me. It struck me as very odd when I first started looking into this case.
So the public in this small town was obviously angsty, and everyone was becoming frustrated as they try to find, Joe's killers to no avail. But as the weeks go by, Joe's police record is released, and it begins to shed some light on what kind of cop Joe really was over the past 30 years. Reports begin to come out about Joe's behavior and even more about his mysterious happenings with money that should have been going to his Explorer program, which we'll talk about, but wasn't. And after 2 months of investigating the death of Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz, the police were ready to report on the findings. This all-American badass may have been a little bit more bad than badass as far as this town's concerned. But before we go into that and the police's findings of this investigation, let's talk more about Joe and his early life and his career with the police department. So Joe Gliniewicz was born Charles Joseph Gliniewicz on August 25th, 1963 in Libertyville, Indiana. He shares a birthday with Sean Connery, Tim Burton, Blake Lively, and Gene Simmons. Quite a
Sean
group.
Connery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hell of a crew. One of the best crews I think we've had.
Yeah.
Man.
And he was one of 5 children born to Joseph and Debbie Gliniewicz. His first steps,
probably the oldest.
Oh, yeah.
Named after the dad, typically.
So his first steps in his military career began in high school when he spent 2 years at the Marmion Military Academy, which is a boys-only Catholic high school in Aurora, Illinois. So right away, getting that discipline, a bit of a head start towards a military career in law enforcement as well. He would then enlist into the United States Army right out of high school in 1981, where he would serve 4 years. And after leaving the Army, Joe was hired by the Fox Lake Police Department in 1985, where he would serve for 30 years up until the time of his suspicious death. After Joe's first year as a cop, he joined the Fox Lake Police Explorers Post 300, part of the Boy Scouts of America that teaches young adults about law enforcement. So he's become this big influence on the youth of Fox Lake and teaching them, the kids that have a tendency to want to go into law enforcement later. He's teaching them a lot and giving them a head start as far as towards a police career.
Yeah. Which is really smart, I think. I think if they started training police officers this early,
assuming you have the right trainers,
they would be a lot more prepared, for hand-to-hand combat and whatnot. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Joe knew his shit. I think the bad aspects of his life weren't necessarily in his techniques.
Let me teach you kids how you embezzle from the police department.
It was another thing. Oh, no. Right. No, you don't teach that. You got to learn that shit on your own.
So after 1 year with the Explorers program, he was running the post. And it was within the first 3 years of his time as an officer that he met and married his wife, Melody. The two of them would remain married for 26 years until Joe's death. And they would also have 4 sons together, one of which would follow closely in his father's footsteps.
Yeah, it's easy to tell which one that was. Right. Watching the documentaries, I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, that one looks just like his dad. He's like tattooed. You could tell he like works out and stuff. Yeah. He wears like American flag hats every day. He's definitely following in his dad's footsteps. And then the other two look like they were like professional software engineers or something. Or 2 of the other ones that I saw. I didn't see all 4 boys in the documentary, but it's interesting the way kids differentiate from their parents, right? If you have a lot of kids, I would say, if you have 3 or 4 kids or whatever, there's always one or so that kind of follows in their parents' footsteps, but they all don't want to do that, right? It's like, nah, that spot's already taken. Like Joe the third is already like dad. Yeah. I'll just be whatever.
Joe, his son's image and Joe's image was looked at as kind of a reason for his success, or part of the reason for his success in running the Explorer program is that he could. The youth identified with him because he didn't fit the mold of your typical police officer. He had more of a bad boy vibe. He had the tattoos and smoked cigarettes like a chimney. And yeah.
And he also had a sense of humor as well.
Yeah. So
he didn't take himself too serious.
Gravitated towards him. During Joe's time as an officer at Fox Lake, he also served 23 years in the Army Reserves, earning accommodations and medals in what his eventual personnel file would list as too numerous to mention as far as the medals and accommodations. And he had like a really long list of positive reports as a police officer as well. A ton of people writing in saying how much Joe helped them with this situation or that situation. That being said, there was quite a file on the other end as well.
Yeah.
You deal with these so long careers as an officer that I'm sure most officers have a file of good and bad as well.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, just doing your job, even if you're just doing what you're supposed to do by the guidelines or whatever, you're still going to anger so many people over the course of 30 years as a public servant. Yeah. That you're going to have some bad shit.
So Joe gained a lot of attention for his efforts with the Explorers post, even going as far as teaching SWAT and sniper training to the members of his post. And this is where the G.I. Joe nickname really started coming into steady use. He always carried himself like a soldier and physically resembled the action figure. Crew cut, pants tucked into his boots, shirt tucked in, always in Army or tactical clothing, even while off duty, and of course was tatted up as well. I don't know if he did this, but when I picture him, I picture like a cigarette pack rolled up in his sleeve. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Right. And he's probably got like an extra clip for his
lots of extra
in the
pockets with ammunition in them.
Yeah, guys like him never want to be caught sleeping, right? You never catch this dude in like shorts and flip flops.
For sure.
You don't catch him in this. Oh yeah. Maybe another like a little 380 or something in the other one,
Yeah. Joe was always in good shape and stood at 5'11" and 160 pounds. He did, however, chain smoke, and the majority of his adult life was diagnosed with early pulmonary emphysema by the time of his death. He became a decorated officer and held several training positions, including K-9, field training, and even SWAT. So very knowledgeable in almost all aspects of police work, it seems, and quite knowledgeable about the military too, with extensive time in there. So he would rise through the ranks at the Fox Lake Police Department and was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2000, eventually ending his career as a lieutenant. He gained an immense amount of love and support from the community for his work with the Explorers Post. That was where he made his mark the most. Obviously, it was training the youth and preparing them for an eventual career in law enforcement.
Well, and that you have to imagine that is his greatest connection to the community as a whole as well, right? I know he did a lot for the police department. He did a lot for the different areas of the police department. But when you have that community involvement, especially when you're teaching something so practical, right? So usable and whatnot, like you're going to make a lot of connections with not only the kids that you teach, but their parents, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents. And it kind of starts to establish this reputation
training,
within the community.
Children or grandchildren of people above him at the police department as well. And so, it's definitely a way to make your mark. Mm-hmm. He worked with lots of youth over the years, and many of which went on to work alongside him at the Fox Lake PD. In a small Midwest town, a club like that can be very popular, and a man like Joe can stand out to a lot of people. He literally became the town's G.I. Joe. It was during his time as head of the Explorers Post that Joe's all-American character began to slip, however. As mentioned earlier, after Joe's death, his police record was released, and those slips of character started becoming public knowledge. It was once the public started to get the kind of things that Joe had been up to, they got wind of this, that his image changed a bit. So we'll go into that. The personal file of Joe Gliniewicz was 264 pages long. The first half of his record was shining. It was when he was first making a name for himself in the town and trying to build up his image. But things slowly started to snowball in his personal life with complaints and write-ups he was starting to get. First for small things, missing meetings, being late, things like that. Once for not writing enough traffic tickets for the month, which you always hear from police, like, oh, we don't have a quota, as far as like handing out tickets. Come on now, we know better.
Yeah. Now, but also I see Joe as like somebody who thinks he's too important for traffic stops. I don't think he's doing this as like a service to humanity and like giving people a break. I think Joe's like, I'm not wasting my time pulling somebody over. I should be making like drug busts and, catching criminals and being in high speed chases.
Right.
And like, he's like, that shit's beneath me. You know what I'm saying?
Also, I think he cared about. I think he cared more about the public's
he's
image
G.I.
of him
Joe after
than
all.
he did the police department's image of him. So like handing out a bunch of tickets is just gonna like soften that love that the community had for him. So I'm like you said, I imagine him pulling people over and giving them a break over and over again because he wants that perfect public image.
Yeah.
Eventually, though, his record started showing much more different side of him than the public had been privy to. Joe began receiving complaints of inappropriate behavior, sexual harassment, drunkenness, and even threats to their other officers. Once even joking about shooting a dispatcher in the chest and then dumping the body in the lake. That incident even got him demoted at the time, back down to sergeant.
Whoa.
But then he went on to regain his lieutenant rank a few years later. Some things included that he stole a tattoo certificate that was donated to the PD and then used it while on duty to get a free tattoo. Right.
Hey, tattoos are expensive, bro.
And if it
Tattoos
was
are
donated
expensive.
to
I
the
don't
PD,
necessarily.
he worked for them.
I mean,
he's
I don't
probably
know.
one of the few that's actually going to use it. I didn't have too much of an issue with that. I mean, he obviously should have gotten permission to take it and use it, but he probably would have gotten permission if he asked anyway.
Especially nowadays. I mean, everybody's got tattoos nowadays. Somebody could use it. I'd like to get more tattoos, but that shit's expensive. Yeah, it's just a certificate. I just need to find some kitchen.
There's got to be a listener who does tattoos
tattooer,
in the,
man. It's just getting
North
started.
Carolina area that can hook you up. Right.
Gotta be. Yeah, hook me up.
So Joe had been letting the Explorers program basically act as his own cops. Multiple occasions of people being arrested and telling the officer that they knew Joey, so they could basically get away with whatever they wanted in their eyes because they knew G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
There was also a report in his file about him being found passed out drunk behind the wheel of his truck and the foot still on the gas. This is a time when gas was cheaper, clearly.
Obviously, it was in Park.
That'd be it.
Right? He was trying to cool down his car, man. It was hot in there, He had the AC rolling. His car's just redlining while in Park at the bar.
Joe had multiple complaints of sexual harassment and sexual assault, including grabbing females' breasts, making passes and comments about female officers, and even having sexual relations with his subordinates. some of which included him pressuring them into sexual actions with him over their jobs. So he's a Harvey Weinstein type fellow as well here.
Yikes. Yeah, this never looks good. And all this shit was in his
I don't
public
know
file?
if it became public after his death, or
Apparently.
I'm sure this was not public common knowledge in the community until after his death. Like, people probably would gossip about it that knew him and knew the police department well, but I don't think the majority of the town knew about this.
Yeah, but these reports had to be filed. I mean, maybe his report was his actual file was being kept secret, but that shit had to be in there. So that means other officers probably knew about this stuff.
In 2003, there was a federal lawsuit against both the village and the PD stating that Joe had pressured a female officer under his command to give him oral sex 5 times in 2000 alone. No.
That is not a good look. That is not a
criminal.
Good look, my
He
friend.
should be in jail for that right there.
Yeah, that alone.
She also worked under Joe at the
Pretty fucked
Explorer's
up.
Post and resigned from there before she reported the conduct.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, though. Some people might be like, well, why'd you wait so long? Well, because her superior officer was the one doing this shit. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't want to ruin her whole career over this. And somebody like Joe, who knows what he would do to keep that shit a secret when he's still alive? Who knows? Right? It's like I'd be a little bit hesitant to come out as well.
Yeah, well, we
until
heard
after
about the
I'm
things he
far away
considered
from him.
doing to the person who exposes his, his money laundering and use of the money that goes into the Explorer program. He discussed offing her a little bit, and we'll get to that in a minute. So this lawsuit against him in the police department stated that the chief was informed of Joe's actions, that his punishment would be 30-day suspension and recommended sexual addiction counseling. He wasn't requiring, though, only recommending. So, that's effective. Just recommending someone do something when they've clearly been abusing their power rather than making them do it.
Right.
The lawsuit would be dismissed in court in 2005 after her and her attorney missed deadlines to file certain responses. And in 2006, she lost her appeal as well as the lawsuit was dropped. So Joe gets away with this one. All of the reports against Joe came to a head, however, in 2009 when a group of fellow officers wrote a letter to the mayor that outlined Joe's behaviors and his actions at the PD. So that talk a minute ago about, do you think the other officers knew? Yeah, they definitely did, because they actually band together to try and expose what he's been up to. The officers stated that they had reported his actions to the chief of police in Fox Lake, but due to his lack of action or discipline dealt to Joe, they felt that they needed to go over his head. So he clearly had the chief on his side, which allowed him to get away with a lot of stuff for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, he was a good officer, though. He wanted somebody like that, somebody who could handle shit on their own. And teacher's pet tends to get away with a lot more shit. These officers said
they could tell that Joe was up to no good, and his actions were starting to show that he was becoming more and more corrupt. Some even felt that Joe possibly had some dirt on the chief or the mayor that allowed him to stay at his job, though it was never proven. Very possible as well. Maybe Joe was at a couple of parties where some shit went down and chief did some things. Who knows?
Oh yeah. You never know, man. We've talked about it before, man. There's a fraternity aspect into most police departments. Not all of them, and I'm not saying all of them are run by that, but there's usually a small boys club amongst most of these officers. And if you get in with the chief, you get in with your boss, a lot of shit can just go away, can disappear.
Yep.
Pretty easily.
So his behavior continued for years throughout his career and pretty much up until his death. All of this was kept hidden away from the public, however, until the time of his passing. And during the initial manhunts for the killers, the police pushed the image of G.I. Joe, the good guy, the town rallied behind. So there was parades. The public was in full support and was more focused on finding who did this to this, local hero, until, the investigation went down and basically finally exposed what he really was. Things started to crumble around Joe. Let's go back, though, and to what led up to his death. Things started to crumble around Joe in the spring of 2014. In March that year, a new village administrator was hired by Fox Lake, and this woman unknowingly would make herself an enemy of Lieutenant Joe just a little over a year into her role. Anne Marin was just doing her job when she began to try and figure out where some of the money in her village's budget was going. Ann started digging into the Explorer's Post and began noticing that there seemed to be no oversight as to where any of the funds that were allocated by the village and the PD other than by Joe himself. So he had full control over the Explorer program's funding from the town and was basically just using it for his own fun. Yeah.
Doing whatever he wants. I mean, he's not being held accountable. So, I mean, he's G.I. Joe. Everybody trusts him.
At this point, Joe had been using the Explorer's funds as his own personal bank account for over 7 years, paying his mortgage, family vacations, spa trips, health clubs, gift cards, and even an account for an adult website. Of course.
Jesus. Like, doesn't he know all that shit could be traced?
I'm sure the town would be excited to learn that he was funding his Brazzers account with their tax dollars.
Yeah, right. All money he's making training their children.
His family had become more aware of his actions and had been enjoying the benefits of the thefts over the years as well. So it appears as though his wife was aware, and even at least one of his sons, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Donald. His son Donald, or DJ, who joined the Army after his father, who also had been a part of Joe's financial crimes, even accepted thousands of dollars from his father from the Explorer's Fund to fix his truck, which he apparently used on a trip instead. So this woman, Ann Marin, began to shake things up so much in Fox Lake that the chief of police, who had been over Joe for many years of his career, Michael Bahan, resigned. So there goes Joe's backer, the guy above him that kind of kept him clean for all this time, is now gone.
Yeah, he had the old Michael Bond. He was in his pocket, man.
Yeah, you have to wonder if maybe some of the Explorer money was going.
Say, maybe he had something on him as well.
Keep him quiet.
Oh, could be. Maybe he should have done the same thing with Ann here. He didn't get to her soon enough.
Joe started to feel the walls closing in on him and began to really panic about what Ann Marin might find in her digging into his Explorer's Post. And as investigations would show, Lieutenant Joe was feeling pressure to figure out how to solve his many problems with the Explorers Club. He was also looking for ways to solve the administrator problem. So this Ann Marin, maybe rather than trying to figure out how to come up with the money that you'd been stealing, you just get rid of the middleman or the issue that's bringing this to light.
But I mean, even if you get rid of her job, her position is still there. Like somebody.
Yeah, but I imagine there was a person there before.
It's like,
that
when
was
do
just
you
not
stop doing
well.
this?
Maybe he's hoping that if he gets rid of her, someone new will come in that just doesn't dig into the Explorer program as much, or maybe he can befriend this new person or whatever.
Yeah, or maybe he can threaten the new person and be like, "Hey, you know why this position came open again so quickly? Yeah,
right.
Let's not let that happen again. Just do your job,
but don't do it at the same time." Yeah.
But not too well.
So Ann Marin continued to pursue answers to where the funds for the Explorer's Post were actually going, demanding receipts, bank statements, credit reports, or anything that could help her figure out where the town's money was disappearing to. And by the morning of September 1st, 2015, Ann had requested a full inventory report from Lieutenant Joe and from his Explorer's Post. But it was on that morning that Joe was headed to work that day, and his final radio calls came through. This was the day that he ended up getting allegedly killed, or apparently killed. So let's discuss the department's investigation that followed Lieutenant Joe's death. The police had already immediately issued a citywide manhunt that would go on the forefront of the whole town's mind. News programs picked up the story, and it became a sensation as soon as the world heard that a local hero cop had been slain in the line of duty. We talked earlier about when the officers arrived on the scene and they heard that fatal shot that killed Lieutenant Joe, and when they discovered the body, how they weren't able to locate his sidearm, but then they did ultimately find the gun nearby, which initially you're thinking, if his gun is gone, there's this suicide's ruled out, right? Like, how could he have shot himself fatally and then the gun be completely gone?
And there's two shots too. It's like, if you were going to kill yourself, why shoot yourself twice?
But despite there being any and every lead into the suspects that Joe Lieutenant was reportedly chasing, the crime scene investigation team and the village coroner's office still had the task of determining exactly how Joe was killed. The crime scene around the abandoned cement factory seemed to give investigators little evidence to collaborate with the story that Lieutenant Joe had given over the radio. He had been shot 2 times, it seemed, One had hit his body armor and his cell phone, deflecting it from penetrating into his torso. But the other shot was fired from the. Yeah.
Oh, that's
exactly
convenient.
Right. Hit his cell phone. I'm surprised
That's
he didn't
real
hit his
convenient.
badge, you know, that old shtick.
Yeah. Right.
But this.
Well, there's not information on his badge that he wouldn't want people to see. You see what I'm saying? That's why I say the cell phone is convenient.
Yeah, true.
Imagine the evidence on that cell phone, bro.
Very true.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like you can't get cell
tricky.
phone records from the actual provider, and that's where they get a lot of the text messages back and forth
True.
between him, his wife, and him and his son about the money that was being taken from the Explorer program.
Yeah, but you may not be able to get.
Yeah.
Pictures, videos, GPS data, all that kind of shit.
So the first shot, as we mentioned, went through the vest and through the cell phone. The second shot was fired under the top of his vest at a downward angle, hit his pulmonary artery, and caused him to bleed out in a matter of minutes. So that answers your question earlier about how it would have gotten past the vest. Downward angle, like basically in the neck area that you mentioned. You know,
Yep, in the neck.
They could find no evidence of anyone else ever actually being on the scene of where Joe was killed. What they did find, however, was Joe's sidearm laying about 3 feet from his body. Apparently, the area was overgrown and swampy, so much so that the gun wasn't able to be located within the first several hours. So that rules out the possibility of it not being a suicide. At least now that's in the cards potentially. With the gun being located and the rest of the crime scene being examined, the investigators began to notice many things that weren't lining up exactly with homicide. While Joe's gear and radio were strewn about, seemingly used and lost in self-defense, there wasn't actually any signs of a real struggle that took place. His body and clothes weren't disheveled or scuffed up. So if you're getting into such a scuffle that all of your weapons and defense mechanisms are strewn about, but yet like it would only make sense that there would be some scuffs on you, scratches, your clothing would be torn, something for sure, but none of that. He was basically immaculate aside from the gunshots.
Yeah. That is odd.
So police began deducing from the crime scene that Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz may have in fact been murdered by a trio of random assailants, but that he may have staged and instead he may have staged and set up an elaborate suicide, all to try and avoid facing the consequences of criminal actions, his criminal actions that had come to light or were about to come to light right before his retirement. This might have put a dampening in his retirement if all this stuff comes out. You know, this is bad timing for him. He's at his 30 years. He's ready to retire, and then this new treasurer, if you will, comes in and starts examining where the money's going, and it's like, fuck, I was about to retire.
Yeah. Instead of retirement, you go into prison. Yeah, it don't look good.
The truth finally comes to light on November 4th, 2015, when the Fox Lake Police Department, the lead investigator on the case and commander of the Lake County Major Crimes Task Force, George Flinko, announced to the public that the investigation into the murder of Joe Gliniewicz had come to a close. The Major Crimes Task Force had come to the undeniable conclusion that Lieutenant Joe had taken his own life and had done his best to stage the crime scene to appear as though he had been murdered. So, a shock to the community. You have to imagine. All this time they've been looking for this person, spending untold amounts of money and police work that could have been spent better elsewhere to find these killers that were not real.
Lord, yeah. Because the resources they use to find a killed cop or to solve a killed cop's murder is extensive. Yeah. Endless, extensive. There's a lot of overtime paid, a lot of helicopter searches.
Has been speculated
that all for
a
nothing.
lot of insiders within Fox Lake Police Department knew from the get-go that this was a suicide, knowing what they knew on Joe, and yet they took the overtime anyway. There's been some speculation about that. But
yeah, well, what are they supposed to do? They're just officers. What are they supposed to do? Come out and be like, nah, we think he committed suicide. Sure. Like, if you're just an officer, you're just a beat cop. What? Nobody's listening to you. It doesn't matter if you do know that it's bullshit. You got to go do your job. That was your orders.
Yeah.
You know.
So Joe had elaborately called over the radio, gave vague IDs of his attackers, placed his gear around him in an attempt to show that he fought for his life before ultimately firing the fatal blow on himself as soon as officers arrived nearby. So you have to think he heard them pull in. He had already fired the first shot, but like either before he called or shortly after calling. Dispatch on the radio, and then as he hears the backup arrive, he knows his time's up. It's time to kind of put a cap on it.
Right. And that's what blows me away. The fact that this backup arrived, right? They heard the gunshot because he heard them. So that means they were very close. They hear the gunshot that these 3 alleged assailants did. And then by the time they get around the building or through the alley or whatever the hell it is,
guys are gone.
to Joe, they're just gone. They're just completely
So much
gone.
so that a full-fledged search involving helicopters, the ATF, the FBI, everybody, no one could ever find a whiff of them.
Nah. Yeah, that's my first doubting clue right there.
Quote, this is one of a kind case, type of case. With the staging of a crime scene, usually you have someone who tried to make a homicide look like a suicide. This was just the opposite, said George Folinko. The team was not only prepared to announce their conclusion in what had happened to Lieutenant Joe, they were also prepared to reveal the findings of the rest of the investigation into everything surrounding Joe's death. They discovered throughout the course of their investigation that Joe had embezzled around $50,000 of funds from the Explorers funds over the years he had been in charge of it. You would think it'd be more than that. It's really not that much money.
No, I mean, I guess not. But it's a lot to embezzle.
I mean, it's enough definitely for them to follow up with criminal charges. But I'm just saying, like, for someone who'd been in the military as long as he had, and someone who'd been in law enforcement as long as, and had a high rank, you would think he would have that much at least in savings or something, and been able to. But then again, why would you if you were stealing from? You wouldn't need to steal from the Explorer program. If he must have, basically what I'm saying, he must have been fucking terrible with money, because like he was. I'm guessing he had a pension from the military at this point, and also was 30 years into being lieutenant in a police department. He must have been making damn good money. Like, how bad are you with money that you then need to also embezzle from the Explorer program, $50K,
Well, I don't know. I mean, you have to, I don't know. I think there's a certain lifestyle that they want to put off. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain success rate that you want to
I would have thought
like.
that he could have made this right.
When you're that level
especially
of
having
community.
the chief of police on his side for a time. He could have seen the writing on the wall, and maybe you would have to think he had like a 401k or something. He could have pulled money out of and paid back the money that he stole from the Explorer program, and kind of like washed it under the rug and gone into his retirement.
Yeah. Well, he did have 4 kids, man. I mean, that's an expense, and 4 boys at that. I mean, I would hate to see his grocery bill alone. Like, so, I mean, the dude had to spend some money. And like I said, he didn't look like he borrowed really any expenses. It looked like they had, nice stuff, nice place.
Is that he just lived. He lived for the moment,
and I'm sure,
and blew every penny that he made. It seems like.
And I'm sure he had an extensive firearms collection. And you know how that can get very expensive. I mean, just ammo alone nowadays is expensive enough. Like, and imagine this man probably had a closet full of assault rifles and all types of different weapons and whatnot. So I'm sure he had expensive hobbies, put it that way.
So the police were able to recover over 6,500 deleted text messages from Joe's phone that had not only detailed many of his different withdrawals from the Explorers Fund and their purposes, but also revealed to them that his wife Melody and his son DJ may have very well been involved in his crimes as well. Joe had texted his son numerous times talking about Anne Marin, the woman who was investigating him for his use of the funds going into the Explorer program, discussing how they hoped that she would have a few drinks one night and he could get her for a DUI, or even about planting drugs on her to get her arrested as well. So, we joke all the time about this, but like, it really does happen. Apparently, if a police officer in a small town that is connected wants to get you, they can find ways to do it.
That's terrifying. That is like one of my worst fears, man. Because who are they going to believe, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you got 30 years on the force. If he would have planted something, she would have went down.
Well, even worse than that, forget the planting of drugs. He also discussed in these text messages having her taken out altogether with the head of a local biker gang. Quote, several weeks into the investigation, once all the phone records, advanced ballistics testing, and financials came together, oh my God, Folinko said, you would think after 11 years with the task force, nothing would surprise me. That was one of those benchmark moments in your life when you never forget where you were, like when President Kennedy was assassinated. That's how much of a shock this was, these findings about, what Joe had really been up to. And the fact that, he definitely killed himself to, hide his past. But,
right.
Yeah. He could just the fact that he considered using a biker gang to kill this woman to disguise his misdeeds with this money.
Well, Well, I mean, you know, he's already considering
Yeah.
suicide probably. And he's like, if this doesn't work, I'm going to kill myself anyways. So I might as well do whatever I could do. And I don't know what fell through with the biker gang. Maybe they didn't trust him, or maybe they wanted nothing to do with it, which was smart. I mean, killing someone in the police force for someone in the police force, that can't be good. Something's not right here.
Yeah. So Joe had he had spent his entire adult life trying to build up an image for everyone else in the public to see. So once the pieces of his perfect life started to fall apart, he decided to stage an elaborate scene where he could get out as the hero rather than have his dirty deeds exposed and potentially go to jail or prison for
tried.
what he had done.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the fallout now that we know what actually happened on that fateful day. For years following the suicide of Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz, the town of Fox Lake was left reeling from the effects. Many and most of the citizens were completely shocked when the information began coming out about Joe. They must feel silly too, because they were out there in full support of him, going to parades and compelling the police to do a better job of finding his killers. And then all of a sudden it comes out that he staged this whole thing, and they must have felt betrayed, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And silly in a way. You feel really silly, like dedicating all that time. There were businesses who were dedicating days to this man, you know? It's just...
Yeah, he had such a good
that's
reputation
heartbreaking.
amongst the public that some were horrified when the reports came out. Some didn't even want to believe it. There was actually, do you see the interviews of people on the streets that were like saying it was conspiracy?
Oh,
it was like...
Well, there's people that now still don't believe it. They still don't. And like I say, you know, I mean, 30 years on the force, he did some good too. Like you can't just mark that out. There were plenty of lives, I'm sure, that he saved. There's plenty of people who he saved from domestic disputes and this and that and robberies. But, you know, and those are the people who are like, well, he was always good to me.
Yeah,
you know?
well,
it's like, well, I get it, but he still did some really terrible things.
most of the time people are judged for their worst moment more so than their their many good moments.
That's so true, man. That's so true. It's like you can do everything right, but if you fuck up one time, everybody's going to remember that shit.
That being said, he fucked up a
Everybody's
whole lot
gonna
more than
remember
one
it.
time.
No, for
He
sure, for
repeatedly
sure.
did things
For
like
sure.
this, where forcing himself onto women when he's in a position of power, stealing money from a cadet program, like all of this stuff. But yeah, I know what you're getting at, but this is like maybe not the best example of that.
No.
The Explorer's Post 300 was eventually shut down following the scandal of Lieutenant Joe. It was cited as failing to comply with the standards and rules of the Boy Scouts of America. No shit. Joe's crimes also put a stain on the entire Fox Lakes PD in the public's eye. And following the manhunt that was started in pursuit of his attackers, the town was also left to deal with several lawsuits from citizens who were targeted as suspects. The police actually paid out some money to some of the people that they had targeted as potentially being Joe's killer, and who knows how much they were pressing on these people. You know, a lot of pressure to find his killers. So I imagine when they found somebody they thought was a suspect, they were probably grilling the shit out of these guys.
Oh yeah, there were some lives interrupted over this investigation. For
Multiple men were brought in as
they owed some
suspects in the killing of Lieutenant Joe. And some of them sued the city for their actions of the police during their time. The men, when they thought they had been responsible, the city even settled with one man early on for $65,000 just to avoid going to trial and becoming a whole thing.
And he costed them so much money.
He
costed them so much money
dude.
during
the
his
amount of
career
money
and
he caused
after.
them after his fake death or his fake murder.
Right?
So much went far beyond $50K. Probably
just the search alone,
maybe into seven
just the
figures.
search alone was.
When you consider all the OT,
God. Yeah, it got insane, man.
Yeah. And not only did the town have to deal with Joe himself, but they also needed to deal with his wife, Melody. Melody was a part of helping her husband move and deposit money from the Explorers funds into their accounts. They knew from the phone records and texts that Joe had deleted that he had discussed these things with Melody and that she was in the loop on large transactions going in and out of the accounts. In 2016, Melody was eventually charged with embezzling an amount between $10,000 and $100,000 and 6 more charges, including money laundering and misuse of charitable funds. And now there is a more recent update. So this is ongoing. She actually has finally been sentenced this year, just 2 months ago in April, to 18 to 24 months of probation after finally pleading guilty to the felony charge of deceptive practices in February. The plea deal was made 6 years after 6 years of legal wrangling when arguing, But when the plea deal, with this plea deal, she was also eligible for a judge to grant the felony conviction to be removed from her record due to her being a first-time offender. So she gets a bit of a slap on the wrist for all this.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so, especially since you were a knowing participant this whole time.
Yeah, and
It's like if your husband wasn't a war hero, he wasn't a cop, I don't think this goes this well.
investigators also pursued leads into Joe's son DJ after his father's suicide and the indictment of his mother, but there wasn't enough evidence in the messages to directly prove that DJ knew exactly where the money his father had given him had come from, so they kept it just vague enough in their texts.
Yeah, he had a good lawyer, it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, DJ lawyered up.
Yeah. He also had never directly made any threats against Anne Marin when his father had been talking about doing what he wished would happen to her. So they weren't able to get any conspiracy charges on him either. They also were not directly planning anything to do to her. Joe was mostly just talking about what could or what he wished would happen. So
understandable, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't think DJ or Melody are going to be in this type of environment anymore. Well, I don't know about DJ. Maybe he grows older and follows in his dad's footsteps, but I doubt he makes the same mistakes.
I doubt he has as much opportunity to do so either. You know, the whole town knows his father unless he moves somewhere else.
Well, I was about to say it's that's easy. You just pick up and move.
Yeah, I was going to say his reputation in this town has got to be pretty stained. You know, people know that not only did his father do that stuff, but he's like basically a miniature version of his father and was also involved in this stuff allegedly. So
he looks just like him. Yeah, I mean, just being a Gliniewicz in this town is going to be difficult. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, that does it for this case. Hope you guys enjoyed this murder mystery, which turned out to be a suicide with a lot of corruption as well.
Yeah.
Small town police work can get dirty sometimes. The boys club you talked about, that seems to be much more prevalent in small towns. They can get away with a lot more.
It is because they're out of the seeing eye, right? They don't have as much federal
oversight
federal oversight. Yeah, they're not peeking their nose into it as much as like Chicago PD. You know what I'm saying? Like Chicago PD, they're probably under the microscope all the time. Not to mention the size of that police force itself. I think they kind of hold each other accountable a little bit more. But in these small towns, I mean, especially when you have a war hero of this caliber and someone with the right, charismatic attitude, the right training or whatnot, I mean, they can come to this small town and just take over, which it kind of seemed like Joe did. I realized he wasn't the man in charge, but it seemed like he had a lot of pull in this small town.
Absolutely.
And that's toxic, man. That's toxic. But you know what? You don't want to be toxic? Your armpits.
Oh, good.
You do not want toxic armpits. You know what I mean?
Yep. Definitely no.
Nobody likes that, bro.
You want an all-natural armpit. That's what I always say.
That's what I always say. And the best way to do that is with Oh My Gaia, which is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. And at Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients. Guys, there's tons of scents to choose from vanilla to cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, one of my favorites, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside, bergamot, amber, pear, sweet pea, sailor, barbershop, another one of my favorites, and so much more, guys, including our very own scent, True Crime Pine. I always keep a jar of True Crime Pine on hand. That's the ones I give out to friends and family, and I like to wear it. It's a nice unisex scent, and it goes great with everything. It really does. If you don't know where to start, try with some True Crime Pine. But because you're True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the word creeper for 15% off your order. That's CREEPER for 15% off at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. That's OHMYGAIA.com. Again, use word creeper for 15% off, guys.
All right, that's one of our primary sponsors. The other is another all-natural company, a small company that you can help support and support our show as well by doing so, and that is Tonic CBD. Not all CBD products are created equal. Whatever you're getting at the gas station or the grocery store may not be up to the standards that your body requires, and that's where tonic comes in. From how the hemp is grown and processed to how it's formulated and delivered into your body, every step of the process that goes into making the product affects your ultimate experience with it. Tonic has original formulas using CBD, adaptogens, herbs, and superfoods, and has been doing so since back in 2017 to deliver the most effective, intentional, and sustainable products possible. Tonic cultivates their own hemp on their certified organic family farm in upstate New York. That hemp travels only 30 minutes to their state-of-the-art manufacturing and distribution facility, where it's turned into a finished product and sent to you, ensuring only the highest quality vibes at every step of the process. Their farm-to-bottle CBD plus botanical blends are uniquely formulated to provide targeted support where you need it most. Each and every high-quality ingredient is thoughtfully selected for its ability to support and enhance the benefits of CBD, resulting in a more effective, well-rounded, and consistent wellness solution for your mind and body. And much like Oh My God, they have a bunch of different blends. And if these, depending on your needs, you can find which one fits you. But Chill Tonic for me has been a savior for anxiety. It also has ashwagandha, lemon balm, and passion flower to deliver a super calming effect. Mm-hmm. They also have blends with black seed oil in it, which is an antioxidant powerhouse, and it's great for your immune system. Mm-hmm. So yeah, check out Tonic. With values rooted in quality, integrity, and sustainability, Tonic is committed to creating a plant-based wellness solution that are good for the people and good for the planet. So visit tonicvibes.com to learn more and use code word CREEPER to save 20%. That's tonicvibes.com, code word CREEPER for 20% off your order.
Right on. And guys, that is grown and packaged right here in the U.S. in New York. Yep. So pretty amazing stuff. That the farm is only 30 minutes from the factory. Like, you can't beat that stuff, man. You can't beat it. No.
All right. I'm going to take a minute to give some props to those who have taken the time to rate and review the show. I want to say thank you to Joe's Duramax in the U.S. Says, TCG are great. These guys make you feel like you're sitting on a patio at your local bar with your buddies having a cold beer. The conversation goes off the rails at times, but that's what these guys do. I like how they don't have cheesy sound effects or clips in each case. Keep up the good work, gentlemen. Thank you, Joe's Duramax in the U.S. And we got
right on. Thanks, Joe.
Wispy White in Canada. Hey, Canada. Says fabulous. 5 stars. Thank you. Hey, short and sweet. That's all you need to do. And then we got D. Kelly 822 in the U.S. says the word naranja is Spanish for orange and is pronounced ranja. Can't find you on Facebook, though. Diane Kelly, Mesa, Arizona. So thank you, Diane. I don't know what that was even about. It must have been reference to some episode that I forgot about.
Yeah, I don't know. We mispronounce stuff often, so we have no idea.
Yeah. It is what it is. Cool. Let's talk about our Patreon page. Why don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Patreon.com/truecrimeguys. Guys, look right below the description of this episode, and you'll see a link with all caps. It says everything True Crime Guys. If you click that link tree, it will take you to everything that we create, including our Patreon page. Or you can get there, patreon.com/truecrimeguys, like I said. We have a $2 tier where you can jump on to hear all of our monthly exclusive episodes. For 1 week a month, we are not on the free platform, and that week we are on Patreon. But also, we're creating other shows, side shows, and different things every single week, which is on Patreon every single week on the $5 tier. So if you sign up on the $5 tier, you'll get access to Just the Banter, a show that me and Lauren do every single Friday, where we get on, we answer listener questions. Sometimes we ask our listeners a question and then talk about their responses. But like I said, that's every single Friday. Pretty soon we'll be moving the recording day of Just the Banter to Mondays. So you guys will be participating on Sundays, but the show will still come out on Fridays and hopefully early Friday morning, 12 a.m. So you'll have it for your Friday work shift and to start your weekend. Also, we have Strange Shorts that comes out every single Monday. Me and Andy, another member of TCG, we sit down and we talk about strange but current cases and true crime and things that are happening all around the world. And then what else we have on Saturdays? Lauren does 5-Minute Murder Show with video every single Saturday. I think you just released episode 10?
Yep.
Of the 5-Minute Murder Show. So that's every single Friday. What else am I missing, Lauren? We got Higher Thoughts sprinkled in there.
Yeah, Just the Banter is also available in video, as is this episode on YouTube.
That's right.
Yeah, so check out our YouTube page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can watch this episode with pictures and different little add-ins to make the story even that much more interesting.
Absolutely. And like I said, at the True Crime Guys link tree, you will also see a link to our YouTube page there. You want to make sure that you subscribe to the official True Crime Guys YouTube page. There are some copycats out there, but they are no longer uploading, so you won't be current on these new video episodes. So look for the TV logo, look for the official page of True Crime Guys. All right?
All right. That about does it.
That's it. Guys, we also have patches. Hold on real quick. We also have these patches still for sale. Just Let's Go Do Cult Shit patches. I'm showing them on my screen right now for $15, guys. TrueCrimeGuys.com. Click Patch of the Month, and one of these bad boys can be shipped to your door for $15 flat. Okay? $15. So let us know. We're selling out of them things quick, and once they're gone, guys. Those are coming straight from us. No third party. No nothing like that. So if you'd like to support the show and get something cool for your bag or your jean jacket, I'm gonna get a jean jacket and put all these on there. It's gonna be dope. But we appreciate it, guys. Any way that you support the show. So all right.
That about does it, everybody. See you next week. Keep creeping.
Yep. Keep creeping, guys.
You hush your mouth, boy.